In the glowing lights of my sister's engagement, when I walked in dressed in my simplicity, my mother introduced me as if I were some kind of maid. But the moment the groom's wealthy mother recognized me, her whisper froze the entire gathering, and the color drained from my mother's face. In the glowing lights of my sister's engagement, when I walked in dressed in my simplicity, my mother introduced me as if I were some kind of maid. I pushed open the doors and the bright white lights of that grand event hall in Dallas, Texas, nearly blinded me. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, white roses were arranged neatly on round tables, and guests in designer dresses filled the room. I was wearing a simple navy blue dress I had bought from Target. My hair was tied back straight, no heavy makeup. I had only come to celebrate my sister. My mother spotted me from across the room. She had a champagne glass in her hand. She was standing next to the groom's mother, Mrs. Howard, one of the wealthiest real estate developers in the city. As I approached, my mother smiled lightly and said, "Oh, this is my other daughter. She helps around the house a lot. Very simple girl." Then she laughed and added, "She prefers staying in the background." I froze where I stood. Helps around the house. As if I were a live-in maid. A few people chuckled. Someone said, "That's sweet." Another person looked me up and down before turning away. I didn't say anything. I just tried to hold my smile in place. Then Mrs. Howard looked at me closely. Her eyes were sharp. She stepped nearer. "What's your name, sweetheart?" she asked. "I'm Hannah," I answered directly. She was quiet for a few seconds. Then her expression changed. She leaned toward me and whispered softly, "You're Hannah Grant? From Austin? The one who runs Grant Community Housing?" I nodded. "Yes, ma'am." Her eyes widened. She straightened immediately and looked at my mother. Loud enough for others nearby to hear, she said, "You mean to tell me this is the Hannah Grant? The housing director who just secured that $12 million state contract?" The room seemed to freeze. Music was still playing, but conversations around us stopped. My mother's face went pale. "Oh, well, she never mentioned." Mrs. Howard cut her off. "Everyone in Dallas real estate knows her name. My son quoted her project in a meeting last month." Now all eyes were on me. The same people who barely noticed me minutes ago were standing straighter, listening carefully. My sister, who had just been showing off her engagement ring, was looking at me like she was seeing me for the first time. I took a deep breath. I didn't say anything. I didn't correct my mother. I didn't explain myself. I just stood there. Someone asked, "Is that true? You run that nonprofit?" "Yes," I replied calmly. "I started it 8 years ago." Now people began asking questions. "How did you get the funding? Are you expanding to Dallas? We should connect." My mother was silent. The champagne glass in her hand trembled slightly. I noticed she wasn't making eye contact anymore. For a brief second, memories from childhood flashed in my mind, but I stayed present. I held myself steady. The event continued, but the atmosphere had shifted. People were no longer ignoring me. They were speaking to me with respect. My mother kept laughing awkwardly. When dinner started, I was given a seat near the head table. The same people who earlier had left me standing by the coat rack now made space for me. Mrs. Howard sat beside me and said quietly, "Your mother undersold you." "She usually does," I replied. Even after everything, I didn't make a scene. I didn't grab the mic. I didn't embarrass anyone. But something inside me had settled. The truth is, my mother has always minimized me. My sister Chloe was always the golden child. She was beautiful, social, the center of attention at every family barbecue. I was quiet. I was good with numbers and planning. I paid for college with a scholarship. I started my nonprofit from a tiny garage office. When I won my first state grant, my mother said, "That's nice, honey. But don't forget to stay humble." When Chloe started an Etsy boutique that shut down after 3 months, my mother told the entire family, "She's just too creative for this small town." Every Thanksgiving my mother would say about me, "Hannah works a lot. She's not very family-oriented." As if ambition were a character flaw. I never argued. I just worked. I built affordable housing projects in Austin. I secured grants for single mothers. I built a name for myself. But at home I was always simple Hannah. That night at the engagement, when people were suddenly looking at me differently, I realized something for the first time. My mother had made a habit of shrinking me. Maybe she thought if I shined, Chloe would fade. Maybe she liked control. Maybe she needed a version of me that fit her story. After dinner, my mother pulled me aside. "Why didn't you tell me about that contract?" she asked. "You never asked," I said plainly. She frowned. "You embarrassed me." "I didn't say anything," I replied. She had no answer. "If you're still with me, go ahead and like and subscribe, because what happened next is where things truly shifted. The next morning I drove back to Austin. I didn't spend the night overthinking. I already knew what I was going to do. I didn't want drama. I didn't want loud revenge. I wanted balance. After the engagement, Chloe was planning to settle in Dallas. Her fiancé, Ryan Howard, worked in his father's business. They were planning to invest in a new mixed-use development project after the wedding. I had overheard during dinner that they were considering adding affordable housing to the project, mainly for tax incentives. 2 days later, I received a LinkedIn message from Ryan. "Would love to explore collaboration." "Sure. Let's set up a meeting," I replied. We met over Zoom. Ryan was professional. "My mom speaks highly of you," he said. "She's very direct," I responded. We discussed the project. I reviewed the numbers. It was clear they were treating affordable housing like a checkbox. There wasn't a proper budget. No long-term commitment. "If you want my organization involved," I said calmly, "we do it properly. Full compliance. Community oversight. Transparent reporting." "That's more than we expected," Ryan admitted. "That's the only way I work." The meeting ended. The following week, Mrs. Howard personally called me. "We want you on board," she said. "I have one condition," I told her. "Full public credit. Grant Community Housing as lead partner in the announcement." She agreed. 1 month before the wedding, a major press conference was scheduled. Dallas Morning News, local television stations. Everyone was there. On stage stood Ryan, Mrs. Howard, and me. My mother and Chloe were seated in the front row. This time my mother did not introduce me. The MC did. "Please welcome Hannah Grant, founder and director of Grant Community Housing, recipient of the State Impact Award." Applause filled the room. I stepped to the microphone and clearly explained the project. "Affordable housing isn't charity," I said. "It's responsibility." I didn't mention my mother. I didn't take indirect shots. I simply spoke about the work. After the event, people congratulated me, not Chloe. Investors handed me business cards. A woman turned to my mother and said, "You must be so proud." My mother forced a smile. Of course. That day the narrative changed. In the family group chat, whenever housing or development news came up, everyone tagged me. "Hannah, what do you think?" Once Chloe said, "You don't have to take over everything." "I'm not taking over," I replied calmly. "I'm just showing up." That was the real revenge. I stopped shrinking myself. At every family event I spoke confidently. When my mother called me simple, I gently corrected her. "I run a statewide organization, Mom." Each time she seemed to shrink a little. On the wedding day, white flowers decorated the church entrance. Chloe looked beautiful. I hugged her. I wasn't jealous. I was secure. During the reception, my mother gave a toast. She praised Chloe. Then she paused and said, "And Hannah, you've built something incredible." I may not say it enough. Applause followed. I looked into her eyes. This time she didn't look away. I knew it wasn't an apology. It was realization. She understood I was no longer someone she could keep in the background. Ryan's company followed through fully. The project succeeded. We received national recognition. Every article spelled my name correctly. Every credit was clear. Now when my mother introduces me, she says, "This is my daughter Hannah. She runs one of the most respected housing nonprofits in Texas." And every time I think, that's who I've always been. I didn't destroy her publicly. I didn't expose secrets. I simply let her stand beneath the weight of her own words. She introduced me as a maid. I introduced myself as a leader. Now I travel between Dallas and Austin. I have my own SUV, my own office, my own team. I attend family dinners, but I don't stand in the corner anymore. I sit at the head of the table. And if anyone underestimates me, I just smile. Because facts speak for themselves. If you believe I handled this the right way, like this video, subscribe and hit the notification bell. I share real stories like this every week. And tell me in the comments what would you have done.